Okay, thank you, Chris Emanuel and Terry Caddo from local chambers of commerce in the 905 for coming on to talk about tariffs. Are they not? Who knows what's going to happen as it's unfolding? Chris, Terry, thank you very much for coming on to the 905er.
Hey,
Thanks for
our
having us.
pleasure. Yeah.
Okay, so when initially I reached out to both of you to come on, this was pretty much right after Donald Trump had said, "Yep, we're going 25% tariffs. We're definitely doing this." We're recording this on Friday, just for our listeners, because Lord knows what's going to change between now and then. Right now, there's no tariffs being planned. Um, Rather than going into the danger of tariffs, I kind of get a sense of what are you and your membership kind of dealing with this? What's the mood on the ground with your memberships in dealing with this situation that we're collectively in? Terry, I'm going to go to you first to chime in.
Sure. And I think it's the effect of the threats of tariffs are on, they're off. It's really affecting the economy. You know, there is a recession coming. This is causing a recession. We're seeing it significantly with car companies are cutting their production by 50%. So suppliers are being affected. So right now we have, some members that are drastically being affected, had they're, a couple months away from being bankrupt that are in the EV supply chain, companies that have 50, 60, 70 people, really looking for, nice to have a government's back, have the provincial government back, get the federal government back, and let's figure out if there's some funding programs so that, have some tax relief, at least delaying of tax payments so that they can keep their cash flow going. And
Mhm.
the other thing for smaller companies, we're seeing a huge uptick of people joining. We've had 60 new companies join the chamber in the last 2 months. And I think smaller companies are looking for, who's facing the same problems? How are you dealing with it? Not a lot of people understand what an entrepreneur goes through. So they get a chance to have that conversation with like-minded peers. And then bigger companies are looking for Canadian suppliers. They want to switch out their suppliers. They want to find local suppliers. Local suppliers would love to pick up that business. So I think chamber is an effective way to meet your peers, network, and either look for suppliers or find new business. So it's a different time. And one of the things Trump has done, he's going to be crazy for the next 3.5 years, but it's a chance to reshore, look for new partners, look for new trading partners, and kind of find what the new normal of Canadian business is going to be.
Chris, how are things shaping up in York region?
Very similar. And, we know that, and again, it's good that you point out the date because it's just everything is changing by the day. And that's the challenge. Whether we have tariffs or not is changing. The goalposts on what is driving tariffs keeps changing. And that's uncertainty is almost as bad as being in a tariff regime. And that doesn't allow businesses to plan. So we're in this very frustrating period right now where it just creates a lot of confusion. No business. I was talking to a manufacturer yesterday. They're in airplane parts and things like that, and they literally can't plan beyond a month. Right. So
Mhm.
certainly the idea of medium and long-term planning is out the window right now if you're in manufacturing. And like Terry said, businesses of all sizes are being affected right now. The one I'd say positive, if we can try and find positives in all of this, is the real patriotism that we're seeing from our members and trying to support local. Again, find domestic suppliers, things like that. That's great to see. It's great to see our premiers, federal government aligned. So right now, if we can find a positive, that's it. But we need some certainty, and that's what our businesses need right now.
I think that's kind of the theme that I kind of want to keep this conversation on is we've went kind of in the last month, I think, from a very certain trade relationship between Canada and the United States. Um, it was always like we could depend on being able to sell our wares or buy our things from the United States. That seems to be thrown up in the air. We don't have that certainty anymore, and I'm wondering, um, are you worried that this is the status quo for the next 4 years?
Although I'm hopeful that we're going to get through this. I mean, this happened last term, maybe not as aggressive out of the gate, but Trump ended up, and rightly so. Any free trade agreement every few years, decade or so, should be revisited, but it was just done under his last term. I'm hopeful that when all the minds get in a room, and it might be after this federal election where we have certainty on our federal government. We get everyone in the same room. We land on a negotiated trade agreement. There'll be some concessions, and obviously, we'll need to recognize some of the demands of the U.S. government, which I think are fair around NATO, things like that. But let's get to that point, and then I think we'll have certainty, some certainty anyway, for the balance of the term. As much certainty you can have under Trump, anyway.
Mhm.
So, Chris, I'm glad you're an optimist because I'm a realist. It is going to be chaos for the next 2 years. And the biggest difference is there's no grown-ups in the room in the US administration. They're all, lightweights, bow to Trump, and there's no rhyme or reason. Maybe the only hope is US midterms in 2 years, because really trade's supposed to come through Congress. And this is a made-up story about fentanyl and safety and emergency protections. So hopefully, maybe in 2 years, if there's a change in Congress or in Senate, hopefully it will limit this. But Trump or the Trump administration is, looking for chaos, and anything they can do to distract from the recession that they're causing in their own economy, they'll use those tools.
Do the two of you think that this is a symptom of Trump, or is this? I think of, because Trump got elected with a major mandate in the states, and I'm wondering if we're looking at more of a cultural shift away from these norms, like this more adversarial point of view. I mean, I'm just wondering, do you think that there might be something more permanent here? That once Trump's gone, is somebody else going to come and say, no, 30% tariffs, that's the secret, and we're just in this kind of chaos era in Canadian American relations?
Well,
I mean, if you look at,
go ahead.
yeah, I don't. I think if you look plurality of vote, also it wasn't the biggest of majorities. So I don't, and I think if you'd polled most Americans pre these rants, they would not have said they had any issue with Canada. And as well, we're hearing it from a lot of senators, governors, and citizens. They're just like, they just don't get it. I think I understand some of the concern about the southern border, and immigration there, and that's different. I mean, we are nowhere near, and as Terry said, the fentanyl issue is basically a made up issue because nobody's letting facts get in the way of a good argument here, and that's the challenge with Trump. It's, again, the facts don't matter. It's gut, it's instinct, but again, it changes. The one thing I think that has helped us, and again, this last, month, where all these tariffs have been talked about, is that every time they get introduced, the stock market plummets. Business leaders get it, and that's an index and an indice that Trump will at least, I think, have some impact on Trump. Not totally, but I think that's what's made him revert each time.
Yeah, and some things I'll agree with Chris here. He did not run on starting a trade war with Canada, siding with Moscow, and causing a recession. And I think there's a lot of regret from people that didn't quite understand. They proud of their country, rightfully so. They want their country to do well, but the things he's doing is not for the benefit of the majority of the people that voted for him. And I think there's an interesting comment on the National last night, whether Chantel or someone made it, but as the defender, the person that's being attacked, you have a lot of opportunities. Same way Ukraine was able to defend themselves against Ukraine. You've got a defender mentality. We don't have to win across the board, but things like taxing oil products, taxing electricity products, taxing here, we can have huge tactical areas. We don't have to win. It's not a big air war where we're going to do everything. It's going to be tactical and really makes hurting the Kentucky senator and stopping their bourbon is a big thing in the Kentucky economy. There's lots of people work for Jack Daniels, and going after Florida and Texas and really red states, we can be a lot more tactical in our defense. And I'll give the federal government credit, the provincial government, working together, having a plan. Every time Trump takes 2 steps forward, we smack him and win.
Well, I like you brought up the Kentucky and Tennessee bourbon. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading yesterday in the paper, Jack Daniels is looking at closing one of their distilleries because the LCBO is one of the largest, if not the largest, single purchaser of American spirits. And I'm just saying, like, right now, we're not even like a day into this, and already Jack Daniels is talking about shutting down an entire distillery.
Yep.
That's huge in Tennessee. I'm presuming in terms of a workforce.
You hate to see any workers anywhere lose their position,
Absolutely, yeah.
but Disney laid off 6%. You want to buy, every Canadian, or not every, but majority of Canadians are selling their properties in Florida. It's causing economic recessions.
And I feel like, and as Terry noted, that kind of how kind of tactical and focused our government has been. I will say, we really need to focus on probably those Republican states because they're going to have greater influence on Trump. And that's where I worry a little when I heard about energy being tariffed going into Minnesota, Michigan, New York. Those are states that probably Trump doesn't really care too much about right now with their leadership. But if we can find tactical ways, our snowbirds not going south or not spending the same amount of money. I just saw a news piece on the amount of vacations being canceled to Nashville. And they know how big Canadians are. We're the single biggest country that people come from to that city, and they're seeing it already. And so that's where we need to hurt them. And it's we don't want to hurt them. We didn't ask for this, but I love that Canadians are, as I say, getting our elbows up now, and we're not going to back down and get bullied either.
Let's go with that thread for a moment, because we could talk about all the ways that we can hurt the Americans can hurt us all the live long day. But I like to think in every crisis there is an opportunity here, and the one thing that we have seen back on the table nationally here in Canada is how do we strengthen our economy here vis-a-vis tearing down interprovincial trade barriers is really on the table. And I want to get your sense of how feasible is this? Is this something that you want to see happen? How would you like to see it unfold? Or is this a pipe dream that are the provinces just so lock in step with regulation and protecting their own industries that really we can't start seeing some of these things tearing down, like seeing more BC liquor on our shelves and more Ontario liquor on Quebec shelves, et cetera, stuff like that. Just your take on that.
So I'm just going to jump in. So the Canadian Chamber, we all belong to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and every year there's a conference where we set our policy. And one of the policies that's been on the books for at least 10 years is to advocate to the government to reduce interprovincial trade. And it's been a pipe dream. I've talked to federal ministers about it. I've talked to provincial ministers. I had the minister of innovation. We've had at Hilde talked to the prime minister about it. They go, yeah, we'd like to do it, but it's the provinces. The provinces would like to do it, but it's the government. And now it's finally happening. I am confident that there will be an announcement today or Monday that 90% of the tariffs or interprovincial tariffs are going to be removed. Liquor is going to be removed. Accepting of credentials in one province will be accepted across the other province. Right away, that's a 5 to 7% increase in the Canadian economy. Getting rid of these self-inflicted, keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Everything I've heard from Minister Anand, who is leading the federal government on this, is that there will be an announcement in the next couple days that majorities of these will be gone. Sorry, Chris?
No, and as Terry noted, the chambers of commerce and the chamber network has been vocal on this for years, as Terry noted, and so it's great to see this happening. the fact that I should be able to go into the LCBO and I should be able to enjoy some beautiful wine from the Okanagan Valley as much as from Oregon, right? But I can't, and so that's wrong, and we're fixing that, and the way labor has traditionally not moved well across the Quebec Ontario border too has been a major concern. So we remove those barriers, we're better as a country. We're at least protecting ourselves a bit. The reality is we're still going to be intrinsically linked to the United States. We need a good trade deal. We need to solve some of these problems. Can't by solving some domestic supply issues, making sure that we're investing in Canadian companies and supporting local. That's all critical, and we need to do that. But that really mitigates some of the issues when these kind of trade battles come up, which thankfully don't come up that often.
Well, I think there's a difference between a dispute. How do you read a line on an agreement is one thing. This, I think, is another level altogether with 25% tariffs. Um, I'm pleased to hear that, Terry, that this announcement might be coming down the wire in a few days. I think it's long overdue, personally. The other thing that's kind of in the zeitgeist in Canada is taking our eggs out of the American basket, so to speak, and starting to bolster trade with Europe, the EU for starters, more into the Asia Pacific economies, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. With you're hearing from your membership, I want to know, how feasible is this? I mean, is this really like a 10-year plan that we should be looking at, or in the next 4 years, is it really feasible to start saying we can start looking into opening up to these markets or supply chains, perhaps? I'm hearing. I want to kind of get a sense of your membership. Are they saying like this is like a 10-year, 20-year plan to get into these markets or to have them come into Canada? What's your sense, Chris? I'm going to start with you this time.
It's definitely a longer term play, and something that's going to take some energy. But you know, geography is always going to be one of the biggest issues. And the US, as much as we need to maybe reduce our dependence on the US and reliance on the US, and we can do that through strategic. I mean, the reality is we should be maybe doing some oil refining, more of that in Canada, West Coast, et cetera, sending to the, say, Asia Pacific marketplace more so. Sure, we need to be doing that, and we need to diversify. I do think, though, geography is we're always going to be so reliant on the US. And so let's fix that. Let's try to, again, part of the interprovincial trade. And if we can find more trade agreements internationally, that will be better for that. And it will, again, mitigate these concerns. But I still think no matter what we do on that front, and especially because that is very much a longer game, we need to focus on fixing things with the US.
Terry.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a short-term thing. I was fortunate to be in a presentation from Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklin about a week ago. And his comments were that this is not going to be like the COVID recovery. It's like COVID's over, the economy goes crazy. It's going to be a 1 or 2 year, 3 to 5% reduction in our economy, which is significant, which is a recession. And then when it comes back, it's going to come back at 2 or 3% growth per year, finding new European countries, new Asia Pacific trading partners, still getting the US back into this, but it's not going to come back. Our economy was growing at 3 to 4% a year. It's not going to come back to that, and it's going to be a slow 5, 8, 10-year return to 2 years to get going positively again. But it's going to be a challenge, and we know it's going to be at least 2 years of chaos, and it's not going to be turn your train around from going to the U.S. and put it on a boat to Japan. That's not going to happen.
I definitely agree. It's going to be 2 years of hardship for Canadians through coast to coast. I want to know, after you're speaking with your memberships, what are they looking for from the province and from the federal government? Are we going to look at, you mentioned tax deadlines as one thing, but I think we're going to need to start talking about more substantive involvement, whether that's tax reform or maybe that is labor reform. I want to kind of get a sense of what they're looking to say. We need to start thinking 2 years, 4 years down the road, new policies, new plans, new investments, maybe from the federal or provincial governments into our industries. Just what do they need?
One of the biggest issues I've seen, and Stats Canada issued a report recently to really highlight to the decrease in entrepreneurialism too in Canada. And we need to be making, I mean, that's where the bulk of your jobs are, small businesses, medium-sized businesses. And we need to be stimulating our economy such that we're supporting entrepreneurs. There's a whole ecosystem that goes with that and how we help accelerate. Manufacturing, the reality is, I mean, certainly advanced manufacturing, that's going to be an area of growth. But manufacturing, as time goes by, is going to become more automated. And I saw that recently in a factory I toured in Newmarket, where they'd almost doubled the size of their factory, but didn't add one more person. They kind of shifted people throughout the plant, again, more automation. I think we need to be finding ways to the new economy, to leveraging technology, AI, things like that. But how do we support entrepreneurs in the startup economy? Because those are the jobs of the future. Because again, we've seen such a decline in those numbers in Canada compared to the rest of the world. That has to be a focus.
Yeah, so building
Terry.
on what Chris said, Canada has fallen behind all of the G7 countries in investment. Companies are not spending the money, the government's not supporting productivity investments in Canada. We've fallen. We're last in G7. It's not even close, and this isn't going to help. But some of the short-term things, mid-sized companies especially, are looking for, and I understand there's programs coming out from EDC and BDC probably Monday, but there's cash flow issues, and some companies haven't really felt any effect yet, but the ones that are feeling it significantly. So quickly turning around, similar to some of the program, not all the programs they had in COVID, but certainly some of the programs to help manufacturers, keep the doors open, keep the lights on, keep rolling, and having some cash flow issues, some funding, and some tax deferment are critical. And that's local, provincial, and national. And nice, hopefully the provincial government will be back sitting again, and hopefully the federal government is back after March 7th and at least functioning.
I'm not going to keep you folks too much longer because I know you're both busy and you've got chambers of commerce to run. But I want to get a sense, maybe a chance to wave the flag a bit here. But what do you think we can do with this new sense of patriotism? Like I've never really seen so quickly, without getting too political, but like before Canadians were kind of placent or a bit divided. I felt with your view set, but all of a sudden, like overnight, we are we're booing the American national anthem. We are proudly Canadian. We are waving the flag like it's never been waved before. And I really do think there's an opportunity here for the right leader, whoever he may be or she may be, to step up here. And I want to get a sense, like, what do you think can be done with this long term for a Canadian economy and Canada as a whole, perhaps?
I look at what's happened. Again, one of the positives has been how it's brought us together. And I'll say this, as much as I know there's been booing of the anthem and some hockey games and whatnot, I really do see that as not. We love Americans, and we love America, and we have such a long history together. I really see that as Canadians booing Trump, and that's what it comes down to. It's not the country. We know the country, loves us as well. But let's leverage this. To see our premiers so unified, that Danielle Smith, Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, all singing from the same songbook, all unified. I mean, who would ever had that on their bingo sheet? Nobody. And so it's fantastic to see. So now, how do we leverage this? And I think, again, having these dialogues about interprovincial trade, fantastic. One of the things, as Mark Carney pointed out, as he's on the leadership trail, is, for instance, all our leaders, Polyev, Trudeau, they all believe we need to be increasing our NATO commitment. And the U.S. is right to ask for that. We've not been contributing to the level we should. But also, as part of that, that doesn't mean now just sending more money to the American, private war machine and Boeing and things like that. We need to be, making sure that there's domestic production of, say, some equipment and things like that. So we're spending that money here. And so, yes, we'll increase our NATO commitment through our spend, but we're going to spend it domestically and support the Canadian economy. So let's take this patriotism that is very rare for Canadians to have. Never seen so many Canadians celebrate Flag Day, which is fantastic. So let's take this. Let's use it as a rallying cry to really help support the productivity gap that Terry spoke about, and making sure that we're investing in Canadian companies going forward.
Yeah, and I really hope it's not a short-term blip, because our country had been extremely divided. Politics had been becoming very Americanized, very Canada's broken, as opposed to all the good things. And hopefully that tone has changed. It'd be nice to maybe a little optimistic that it remains that way long term, but certainly it's heading that direction. Premiers are working together. On a personal note, it's nice to take back the Canadian flags. Trucker convoys did not represent the Canadian population, did not represent Canadian business, and they had taken the flag and used it for propaganda. It's nice to see all Canadians having the Canadian flags up on our homes, on our businesses, and that's really positive and great to see, and really hope we can build on this and not turn it back being decisive if there's a federal election in 2 months. Hopefully the federal election is about what brings Canadians together as opposed to what brings Canadians apart.
You know what? I think that's where we're going to end this, because I think that's a good note to end this conversation on. Chris Emanuel from the Central York Chamber of Commerce, Terry Caddo from the Burlington Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both very much for taking the time for your schedules to come on and talk about this. Part of me hopes this is the last conversation we're going to have about this, but the other part of me says probably not. So as they say, elbows up, keep your stick on the ice, and we're going to get through this together. Thank you very much, both of you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Joel.